Good morning, people in the United States, North America, good afternoon, Europe, good evening, people in Asia. Welcome to today's webinar, where we are talking about a topic that we brought up before the lovely crisis hit us and now is more relevant than ever. It's all about straight to digital, and this is something that is now literally being forced on us. So we're going to have a great conversation for the next hour about this, and joining me Robert Scalgian from TD Bank, Eric Hutto, who I've known for several years at Unisys, who's Chetan Dubey. Many of you will be very familiar with Chetan, who's the president and founder of IPsoft, and my colleague Melissa O'Brien, VP of Research at HFS. Just a few tips around how to ask questions. We'll try and keep this interactive. We'll try and get to some of these today if we can. If not, we'll get to them later. Most of you are probably getting more familiar with Zoom, I hope, in this market. So type in your questions in the little box that comes down, and we'll try and get to you as soon as we can. We'll also have a copy and a recording of this webinar available on the HFS website and probably the IPsoft website as well after the event. And at HFS, we're looking very much to be a partner to our clients to help them think through their pivot strategies as we go through a very challenging but potentially exciting environment. Seeing a world going through what we call a paradigm shock, and it's an extreme shock to many, and many of us are having to make very rapid decisions to one, get ahead of the market, but B, figure out a plan for what happens as we emerge. A few numbers about us: we get well over 2 million visits a year to our network of sites, our webinars, obviously our social media, and our hfsresearch.com. And we've been very busy writing a lot of research in the last few weeks in particular, as interest in what's happening in the market across the AAA of automation, analytics, and AI, and how they're fueled by digital business models, emerging techs like blockchain and global sourcing. And then just go to our website. We have, I think, something like 187 documents we've written in the last few months, and many of them are related to what's going on in industries and how they're being impacted by the paradigm shock. So go to hfsresearch.com and take some time to download some of this stuff. We make some of it freely available as well. We believe that people read our stuff and like it, they may actually sign up and become a client one of these days. So a prime minister who was a great wartime prime minister, not the greatest peacetime prime minister, once said in 1944, I believe, "Never waste a good crisis." Well, I wouldn't say this is a good crisis. It certainly is a crisis, and it's certainly bringing us a wave of disruption that I don't think we've experienced in our lifetimes. And barring meltdown of the climate or another world war, this is going to be the year we'll talk about for a very long time that changed the world. 2020 is a year I think many of us want to get through, maybe see the back of at some point, but we may also look back with some memories of a year that gave us some good habits. We learned to be far more efficient. We learned to really embrace digital technology like never before. Someone said to me the other day, if this had happened 15 years ago, we'd be screwed, but we've survived pretty well. And I even have my son now telling me he thinks Google Classrooms are even better than the real ones. So make of that what you may. But we're going to emerge from this with a lot of very digitally agile firms, super energized businesses, ones who aren't relying on these legacy infrastructures of old, things that have really plagued us for years. I think automation and deep learning are going to become really native to the survivors of this paradigm. And remember, once we get past the health crisis and some of these issues, businesses do come back. They thrive, right? New airlines will appear to replace ones that may go into bankruptcy. Hotel chains, restaurant chains, manufacturers. New businesses come back. Businesses evolve. And we just have to focus on the creativity and passion we have to not waste an opportunity. And I really call this a have-to-have economy. You need to be making something or servicing something or creating something that people just have to have. In this economy, nice to haves aren't going to work for a while, right? So you need to figure out what that have to have is. That'll get you through the next year. But at the same time, you've got to figure out what that pivot strategy is as 2021 emerges, and we need to hit the market with new ideas and new innovations. And we've been talking for a long time about the hyperconnected enterprise. And for the last 3 decades, we've gone through shared services, outsourcing, even basic digital in 2010 when it hit the world. That was about responding to the needs of the customers as those needs occurred. It was about speed. Now we're in this age of what we call the OneOffice, which is more about anticipating. How do you start to anticipate the needs of your customers before they may even know what those are themselves? We talked a lot about this, what's going to happen in 2020 plus, right? We're going to see super intelligent digital workers. We'll be talking a lot about those today. We're going to see the impacts of things like quantum computing that could unleash power we've never experienced before. And we're going to experience more autonomous, hyperconnected supply chains. We're in a world of mass localization now, and as these economies open up, getting goods to market is going to be harder than ever. How do you have intelligence to enable you to do that effectively? But in reality, everything we've done for 30 years and longer has pretty much been the same stuff, the same way, just a little faster, a little maybe more efficient. We've moved data around better, but we haven't fundamentally changed how we run our operations. Why? Because of lethargy, because of the fact we didn't have to, and we had levers to pull. Suddenly, there are no more levers to pull. If you want to truly get more value out of how you run your business, you have to actually change how your customers and employees operate, how they interact with each other, how you can actually get processes running end to end. And we've been known this for a long time, coming off many years of economic growth and prosperity, getting people to actually do something different was actually very challenging. Suddenly, we have that change in space. We have a burning platform that we could never have envisaged before. In 2008, we bailed ourselves out of a huge financial services driven crisis. You can do that with vast amounts of money. We have a crisis now that no one foresaw. That is very, very difficult to get around because of the uncertainty it creates and the time it's going to take to actually cure what is going on and get past it. So the real change is a real shock. And, we've been through the crisis piece. We've been through, I think, stabilization. We're now in realization where it's about placing our bets. It's about understanding the true financial impact to ourselves, our clients, and our partners. And it's about what I call unleashing people, right? It's about a playbook that hasn't been written before. There is no written rule book to how we get through a crisis like this, right? Cash is everywhere. You can get hold of cash, it's very easy. How do you deploy that cash? That is critical. Deploying that cash and making it work for you is the way through this. But ultimately, how do you cross-pollinate your talent? How do you ultimately figure out how your business executives can truly embrace technology, get the most out of it? How do you help your IT executives not just deploy technology, but understand the business logic behind it? You cannot do low-code implementations, for example, if you don't understand the basic schemas of databases and how apps fit together. You have to look at the whole piece. And so that means business executives and IT executives have to come together to make this thing happen for the first time. It's about a mindset. It's about a raison d'etre. And, a couple of examples here I thought I'd share. A company who I'm sure we've all spent vast amounts of money with, Lego, back in 2003, they were actually going to end the brick. They actually felt the Lego brick was done. No one was buying it anymore. And they wanted to get into jewelry and clothing and theme parks and other things. They completely lost their customer centricity. And then they realized, let's get an insights group together. Let's really figure out what we need to do here. Let's get down to the brass tacks of why we exist. And, they came up with a mindset, which was, let's just inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. Let's find a raison d'etre. Why are we here? What are we actually doing? Let's stop thinking about the next quarter or the next financial metric or being the best at something and just figure out, why do we exist? What is our reason for being? And another great example here is Microsoft. A few years ago, no one liked dealing with them anymore. They've become a bit stodgy. It was very driven by money. There was a lot of politics internally. Dealing with their support was a nightmare. And then Nadella comes in. He's like, we got to fix this. So he dug deep into the DNA of Microsoft and realized that they actually were an innovation company at their core. That's where they came from. So he streamlined that, he fostered it, he drove it hard, and then came up with a mindset which was, let's just empower every person and every company on the planet to achieve more. It's like, let's come up with things that give people a reason for working with us and partnering with us, not just a finite goal that will be successful for us. And I won't go through all these examples, but a funny one I love was Blockbuster wanted to be the global leader in rentable home entertainment. Netflix, they decoupled themselves from one delivery mechanism and just wanted to entertain the world. Have a raison d'etre that you can always live by, and you can slip into new markets, you can go out of markets, you can create new things, and you can inspire your people by adding adjacencies that are really true to your ethics and your reason for being. And it's like we talk about this a lot, and Chetan and others will bring this up today as well, as we talk about the OneOffice, which is all about bringing the customer and the employee together in a way that we hadn't done before, collapsing the barriers, making sure that we get ahead of the customer needs, incentivizing people to have common goals about making their customers truly enjoy the experience. And we've never had a time before where customers and employees are twinned in this duality of digital. We're all working together in the same environment. That'll eventually change, but there's never been a coming together now where we can truly understand these three adages of the OneOffice, which is not just about how do we automate the digital underbelly and how do we do our foundational processing better, but how can we augment our people? How do we actually create real intelligent digital workers to drive things forward, to free up people from a lot of their mundane transactional work, to really free them up to spend time interacting and being more socially intelligent, driving more value for their business. I mean, recent weeks, I don't think anyone spent more time than ever just talking to people, looking at people, sharing ideas, sharing views. That's where value is created. Not let's spend time doing transactional tasks that can basically be done in an automated fashion. So the drive for automation has happened more than ever before. And my colleagues will touch upon this as well a bit, but we spoke with over 600 businesses recently after the pandemic to get a feel for new types of initiatives that they were driving in light of this paradigm shock. And 4/5 of them are actually looking at designing whole new ways of operating in this environment. So people are looking at a much bigger pivot than they were before. Forget incremental change, forget tasks and activities, but what's that bigger pivot? What does it truly look like? And we talked about straight to digital. This was a fun piece of data we shared last year where we looked at desires behind outsourcing. This is across many of the global 2,000 businesses, and we do this with KPMG every year. Back in 18, a lot of companies were still increasing reliance on traditional outsourcing models. I think 64% were making big increases. That actually was dropping substantially by last year. A lot of clients had already realized it's time to move on from some of these transactional models and start thinking about other things. So you could see, 64% went down to 28% between 18 and 19 when it came to outsourcing. And so we asked these clients, what are you doing when your outsourcing contracts expire? And, 23% said, we'll stay with the same ones. We're okay with it. We're not going to change much at all. 26% said, we may stay with the same partner, but we want much more focus around outcomes. We want much better automation within our engagements. 31% actually said we're done with our current provider. We're going to change. It's time to co-invest with somebody else. We needed a partner model that works for us. And then actually a fifth had said, look, we're actually just going to bring this stuff back. We're actually going to look at doing things again. We're going to go straight to digital. So this was just before the pandemic. And now I think customers are actually evaluating even more who they're going to work with as they look at, what do they have to have in this market? How can they make this shift to digital much more effective for them? And you can see this, a lot of the industry is circulating around what do we do next? But even the best needs customer support. There's a great future for service providers to partner to help clients do this. They just need to figure out the model from the old way to the new way. And when we spoke to these 600 odd companies around the pandemic and how this was going to drive their decision making, I think one thing was very clear. They're looking obviously at cybersecurity. The increased surface area due to work at home in particular has created a lot of concerns. We've had a couple of ransomware attacks already on high-profile companies that have come to the press. But the second largest area for big investments were process automation, and then lower down the stack, AI. So companies are really looking at how do we take our digital investments and get more out of them? How do we move to a much more digital mindset in this economy? So I'm going to hand off to my colleague Melissa O'Brien, who's going to talk a bit through this reboot and how we're going to start to move a bit more aggressively with the use of digital associates.
Great, thanks, Phil. So interestingly, we did a study in pre-crisis conditions on what we deemed the hypothesis to be straight to digital before there was this kind of burning platform for straight to digital. And we looked at it through the lens of enterprise leaders and did several interviews with folks to get their inputs, and a lot of it was in the light of IPsoft Amelia and their implementations with that, which we'll hear from the folks today who all actually contributed to that research. And what we came across was sort of the 5 principles of how digital associates are getting toward that OneOffice enterprise experience that Phil showed a couple of minutes ago. And it's actually really interesting to look at this in the light of our current business environment, our remote business environment, uncertainty and crisis. And you could see top of the list, one of our top findings, the top principle that came out of a lot of those discussions were around being able to connect employee and customer experience. And that's just even more important in today's sort of remote environment where they're sharing this kind of digital remote type of experience. And how do you align that and make sure that your employees are actually empowered to be able to service the customer and using digital associates as a part of that. Another few pieces on it were around training and just the thinking through the fact that digital associate, like a new employee, while it might be automated, you still need to put into place the foundational pieces that connect them to your desired business outcomes. And similarly, design them for smart interactions. So becoming channelless, making experiences touchless, and removing those friction points. So what are those kind of low-hanging fruit, really easily automatable, but also really rewarding elements that a digital associate can help resolve in a much more quickly and scalable way. And I think we've seen this play out over the last few weeks more than ever, where companies have needed to rely on automation and quickly rolled up digital associates in order to manage volumes, in order to manage uncertainty and extra folks that are jumping in and needing help with things between healthcare, between government, and I think across the board. And then lastly, which is something we'll touch upon too, is around using digital associates for security purposes and driving that compliance. And how do you make that your environment's more secure? Again, even more amplified in today's environment, where we've actually seen use cases where digital associates can do the sort of beginning checkoffs on security elements, on fraud detection and things of that nature, and then pass off to a process or to a human employee. So all of these things were some of the big picture pieces that we found from that research study. And as I mentioned, the panelists that we have on the call today were a big part of developing this research. So we want to hear from them. I'd like to move on to introducing that panel. So we have 3 very esteemed folks on the call today, and I'll ask each of you perhaps just to give your quick, maybe 10-second speed round intro, and I'll start and go from left to right. Eric?
Thank you, Melissa, and welcome everybody. Eric Hutto with Unisys. I'm the president and COO. Primary responsibility at the company is to operate the company and deliver to our clients from sales all the way through delivery. Been with the company about 5 years.
Thanks, Eric. Rob?
Hi, everyone. It's Rob Skaljan. I'm part of TD Bank Group. We're located, headquartered in Toronto, Ontario, one of the top 10 North American banks out there. I lead the practice for TD Bank around conversational AI and omni strategy.
Great, thanks, Rob. And Chetan, would you give a hello, please?
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Chetan Dubey, the CEO of IPsoft, in the business of delivering digital employees that have human equivalent level of intellect.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us. And I'd like to start by learning the background, particularly for Eric and Rob, who have been working with IPsoft Amelia as a digital associate in different elements of their businesses, to get some background. And, you know, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, a lot of folks were in this mode of wait for digital. And now there's this burning platform to actually do the straight to digital. So you folks were involved in our research report that we developed a couple months ago, and you know, in pre-pandemic times. So I'd love to hear, maybe Eric, we can start with you, some of the background on your work with IPsoft and Amelia and the shift that you've seen over the last few weeks.
Sure. Well, one, we have a great partnership, and clearly, like a lot of people, right, when you start to look at the capabilities of Amelia, you tend to look at it, how does it help you with your efficiency and productivity? We kind of jump straight to the clients, right? Because really we're in the business of servicing clients and helping them become more efficient and productive, but also finding new ways for them to create experiences. I think one thing that you said was right. This is an experience race. We're in an experience era, and you know, people will opt in and out of experiences very quickly because they can. There's so many alternatives. So when we looked at it, we thought, let's get it to the client face. We have clients up and live with it. They love it. The experience is better for their associates. You know, that was the pre-pandemic. The thinking today is we need Amelia to become a digital sales associate. We need Amelia to become a digital account manager. We need Amelia to get to the front line and help us create an experience that is so much more digital now, because just, again, because of where we're spread out and we can't connect like we used to, we can't be in person. So I think the essential services dialogue over the last few months will turn into an essential engagement conversation that each company will begin to define. And when that essential engagement gets defined, we have to be prepared to engage them on their policies. So we think that the digital associate now becomes accelerated across the company. It's not a back office, it's not a front office. It's in very key roles where engagement used to be critical to success, and we still have to be able to have it. It just has to be done differently.
That's great, Eric. And yeah, we'll definitely get into more of that around the kind of shift from central services to central engagement. I want to touch on that. But Rob, if you could also chime in on what your experience has been, how you kind of got started with using digital associates and how that's evolved over the last few weeks for you.
Yeah, sure. I've kind of been on this journey for the last couple of years, as you know, in terms of looking at conversational AI and as an emerging space, and constantly sort of questions and use cases around how we can use this kind of help benefit customers from a financial perspective. We have rolled out apps, particularly on a Canadian mobile app side of things, around being able to answer sort of general FAQs. But also take it sort of up another level. We've partnered with some other smaller startups to sort of aggregate some of the transaction history we have on our customers, so that we can analyze their spending habits, and almost kind of like a Fitbit for finance, which was something we launched a few years ago, and we've actually incorporated that within our chatbot capability, so that customers can also get those insights through that chat type of experience. So customer facing, those are kind of the ways that we're today kind of helping our customers. Looking downward, down the road, other areas we're exploring is how do we provide that sort of a device level expertise. So one of the things TD did about a couple of years ago was actually buy a company, an AI startup called Layer 6, based out of here in Toronto, and with the idea of leveraging them to take our customer data, see if there's a way that we can get insights into our customers. So there's some opportunities down the road where we can actually take some of those customer insights, and if you almost kind of want to visualize almost like a little white angel on your shoulder, kind of over, helping you kind of guide you down your financial path, based on what's important to you at that given time. So that's sort of kind of the way we were kind of looking at things sort of pre-COVID. The way things have kind of changed COVID-wise, if you can think from the bank's perspective, we've got 1,300 stores in the U.S. We've got around 1,100 branches here in Canada. Having that sort of bricks and mortar has been an important part for the bank in the past, but obviously with COVID and the need to social distance and isolate, that's created some challenges for us as well. So how we look at that going forward, Conversation AI is definitely, or what I would say is COVID's kind of almost helped write the business case for having more conversational AI experiences that can help our customers as well. And as well, we've also been looking at how we can help employees and, both, get access to information readily through a chatbot experience. And as well from an agent assist perspective, how can we help agents have the tools they need to be able to kind of answer those customer responses quickly.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. And I definitely want to get deeper into some of those topics. I mean, in particular, what you talked about with the branches and just how the COVID crisis has forced a lot of companies not just to automate and digitize quickly, but also to change just the way that they're viewing these models. And I also want to get deeper into your comments around the connection with employee experience. Let's just look at the next slide real quick on a piece of data that Phil showed that I wanted to ask, that one. I wanted to ask the panelists to comment on. I mean, for me here, I think it's interesting to see the bottom two responses where you've got pretty much on par answers for these bottom two around digitizing existing processes to operate more effectively, but then also about designing new ways of operating in this environment. And I think that elements of what you both just touched upon, there's both that goes into this. So just interested to get your thoughts on this. I mean, how much of what you're experiencing right now is about just digitizing processes to get more efficient versus maybe changing and rethinking the way that you're operating and the role that your digital associates are playing in that?
Hey, Melissa, this is Eric. I'll jump in. As a service provider, right, as an IT service provider, I would say that when the pandemic hit, we went from 15% remote to almost 100% remote as a company. We've closed our first quarter, our books. The whole company operated. We didn't miss the service level. So I don't know that we've been so much focused internally. Of course, there were things to be done to stand up the capability, make sure connectivity, all those things. But really what we have begun to realize is that we still have to sell, right? We're a public company. We still have numbers to hit. So we've had to really rethink the sales experience. What technologies do we use? How do we manage a virtual presentation during a sales pursuit? Digital placemats, the ability to really create an experience that is if you were in the room. So I think that's where it really challenged us, because I think, Phil, you said it right. There's going to be a definite shift in how service providers either adapt or they go away. We're either moving into this and we're enabling it, but we ourselves have to be just as good at it as we are trying to help our clients be good at it. And I think that's where we have, again, moved everything kind of thinking about is, what does this engagement look like? How do we engage? How do we be effective? How do we continue to run the business, grow the business, be successful when, our, decades of operations in IT service providing is you show up with a pursuit team, you're in a room together for 2-3 days, you have workshops. Well, you can still do all those things. You just do them digitally, but you have to be good at it. And it's not just assume that people can go from in-person to a Zoom call and it is good. There are things to learn about how you conduct yourself. So I think it's a whole ecosystem to be a digital master, if you will. You certainly have to have the customer solutions, right? The ability to do all those things, the platforms, the software. You've got to have operational execution, right? It has to be pretty consistent, reliable, everything connected. You got to have architecture that supports it from a technology, but you got to have the people ecosystem. I wouldn't want to forget that. But it now needs to be complemented with this digital associate, which is why we are really really looking at how we can really rethink how we operate in the business development side of our house, not just how we operate the company or deliver service levels.
Right, and just thinking about those digital associates, if you're putting them in actual sort of revenue related roles. I mean, is that kind of the idea to propel this forward?
Yeah, you know, it is, because if we look back over decades of selling, it doesn't matter what industry, it's not just IT services. You hire 100 salespeople, you'll get a third that will produce, you know, a third that'll be kind of somewhat productive, and a third that never sell. And that's just been a cycle for decades of getting, you know, business done. We just think about why that fails, right? Well, sometimes it's a lack of preparation, knowledge, the ability to articulate value. You know, you just get different experiences and consistency there. But just think about when Amelia shows up, and Amelia, you know, doesn't have any emotion, not grumpy, didn't oversleep on the alarm. I mean, always consistent in their knowledge base of what you are creating as value for clients. And it's now not replacing necessarily all the people, but it is kind of that SME, that consultant, that person that's complementing that sales experience. And they're always on, right? We're not always on. Sometimes we don't answer the phone when people call. Well, Amelia always answers. So yeah, I do believe that these roles, we can turn all the effort to train individuals to training a few digital associates that are just always going to be consistent in that experience, to complement the process. Before the pandemic, we had embarked on building a digital sales platform to take all of the power that we, you know, and put it in the hands of our clients, our third-party advisors, our salespeople, our client executives. Anybody can access and really price our services. They can decide what locations they want. You know, that's coming up here in August to go live. But how can we complement that now with a digital associate? How do we tie that in to the rest of an ecosystem that gives us superior experience against my competitors? I think that's, you know, one of the things that popped out in your last item here is how to get ahead of the competition, and that's how we're looking at it.
That's awesome. And using those digital associates as a competitive differentiator. I think, you know, also depending on how they're designed, how they're set up, how they're part of that ecosystem and supporting the employees, of course, I think is huge. That's great. Yeah, and I want to get some more thoughts around that, the differentiation piece. I want to give Chetan a chance to chime in as well. But let's run a quick poll for our audience today, just to kind of get a level set on what folks are thinking in the paradigm shock. If we can bring up that poll, please. So priorities, what's the most important initiative for your company as it works its way through that whole realization phase of paradigm shock? And we'll ask you to choose up to 2 anonymous answers, but are you establishing a hybrid digital workforce just to kind of keep operations running smoothly, like we saw in the data point in the last slide? Redesigning workforce and automation strategy to get ahead of the competition, aligning employee and customer experience toward business outcomes, leveraging emerging tech for solutions across the value chain, investing in integrated automation, so a better defined digital strategy, or going straight to digital as fast as we can, or none of the above. So we'll give folks a couple minutes to respond to that. And I'll also remind folks that you can feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A function in Zoom as well. And when we're ready, let's take a look at the poll results, please. All right, so top results we have is actually redesigning an automation strategy to get ahead of the competition and aligning employee and customer experience, like we've been talking about in the OneOffice concept and as one of the principles for straight to digital. So Phil, I'll pass this over to you you have some comments on this, or we're going to ask the panelists as well for their input.
Thank you, Melissa. Can we just pop the results up again, Andy? So, oh, here we go. You see use software, right? So redesigning workforce automation strategy to get ahead of competition, aligning employee and customer experience to business outcomes. It's interesting because we did a poll in a recent study as well, where we were surprised at how much the employee experience is becoming part of the customer experience. And you know, we're starting to see a lot of the leading digital services firms as well repositioning services that they used to provide for their customers now to their employees. So clearly that is leading the conversation rather than just going as fast as they can. I think people are thinking about making a more sort of permanent shift in there. So, you know, thinking about what our, you know, panelists are thinking about. Chetan, I'm going to ask you to chime in first here, because I think you've been waiting for a burning platform. You've put many years of development into Amelia and then the products, and I'd love to hear from you, you know, from your heart. You know, what are you hearing from your customers in terms of what has changed, and what sort of pressures and opportunities is this piling onto you guys at IPsoft? Are you under pressure to deliver as fast as possible, or do you feel customers are saying, get this right and make this happen? What are you seeing?
Thank you, Phil. Many years was my estimation when I was at Courant Institute of Math Sciences, and I told my advisor that it would take us a couple of years to start to clone human intellect. It has taken us 21 years. But we can, I think our customers and Eric's and Robert's are the real trailblazers, and they can give you a better estimate of how close we have started to really come and sincerely towards that elusive Turing horizon. But to answer your question, I think what we are starting to see is consistent with what, and I can tell you a spectrum of Global 2000 that we deal with. We are starting to see that their old model of customer care has collapsed. And the largest airlines in Germany have 7 hours and 22 minutes of wait time, and even the largest bank here has 2 hours and 12 minutes of wait time. It doesn't have to go too far just to be able to see like that old model has collapsed. And there's a board level mandate of not just, while there's a big focus on cash conservancy, there's another big focus at the board level that has started to say, can digitization be used to increase the revenue, increase the cash reserves? Can it be used for continuous communication with our customer? Can it be used for streamlining our supply chains and the partner ecosystem? And there is a big impetus we are starting to see. If this building is to be rebuilt, since the old building has collapsed of the way that we were doing customer care, if this building has to be rebuilt, we want to build it, and forgive my directness, but we want to build it 35% less costly in the cost of delivery. We're seeing this across the board, that every one of the Global 2000 is saying, yeah, we'll have to rebuild this whole building. We want to build it better customer experience, and we want to build it at 35% less cost of delivery. And I can tell you, the first part is obviously clear about the cost of delivery. The second part is key. I think Eric hit the nail on the head about the competitive differentiation. And can you deliver you can reduce the cost of delivery. You can get quite a lot of cute little chatbots out there, and you can drop down the cost of delivery, and along with that, will give a customer experience as well. The question is, can you deliver good competitive differentiation in customer experience, which is fundamental to customer retention and increasing the customer footprint and origination? Can you do that, and what is required for doing that? Currently, humans are doing that. So can you do that with a technology that is subhuman level of customer intimacy? All what you find prevalent in the marketplace is the hamburger menu equivalent or the happy case scenario equivalent level of conversational intelligence, which is essentially what you could do with the hamburger menu on the right on your website. You can do with the same thing you could say, or you could pull down the menu and you could type that, or you could select that option. That's what you find. If you talk to the global CIOs, they will tell you that that only represents 14%. The happy case scenarios only represent 14% of the actual cases that are coming in their call centers. 86% of the people do not pick up the phone and call. Telefonica, where we had 210,000 calls yesterday. Nobody is calling the phone company in Peru and telling them, hey, we are very happy with your service, or hey, can you just tell me what my account balance is? They are calling about a conflict resolution. I can give you specific examples. And this morning I was looking at one of the largest insurance company where they're calling, and even the simplest case, they are calling and saying, hey, I want to start my coverage. We do the origination for this one of the big 6 insurance companies. I want to start my coverage by, the simplest case I'm giving you, by paying my initial payment by a credit card, and then I want to be able to pay every month with an automatic debit. I can tell you quite in earnest and sincerity, 100% of the chatbot technologies will fail in addressing that simplest case. Why? Because we are in the business of classification, not comprehension. We're using DNN models to classify what was said into one of the pre-existing buckets and playing whatever song is at the end of that bucket. So you will get either I'll pay by credit card or I will have a monthly debit thing, song will come on, but you will not get the temporal differentiation, the chronological differentiation that what is the person trying to say. Only if you talk to professors that have done this research for a couple of decades, they will tell you that only by the marriage of symbolic logic systems with the connectionist systems of deep neural network can you really start to approach that level of customer experience and competitive differentiation that is distinguishing the Erics and Roberts in their approach to the market. That's the only way you can get 86% of your customer base, actual call volume, get a good quality, differentiated experience, which is fundamental to you retaining them.
Thanks, Chetan. And I know we've talked about this as well in the sort of the level of change and transformation that enterprises need to go through to adopt a solution like Amelia, for example. As you look at this current environment, what have been your experiences so far in working with clients, maybe newbie clients as well, in this sort of remote model? Has it been a challenge? Do you find you found new ways of working with them? Has it been more them exploring, we can get a lot more done in chat rooms and video than we actually realized? I mean, can you share some of those experiences?
Yeah, I think Eric and Robert has got 85 million session volumes coming in, so they perhaps can shed more light on this. But I can tell you that almost everybody that we have dealt with has exactly, Phil, what you started off with the conversation was the fact that everybody has raced to, it's no longer a conversation. It's no longer, we are going to go with incrementalism. It is almost the world has read off your playbook about straight to digital. And the world has read off your playbook that says, we're not going to do it in you can't substitute humans with half humans. You cannot elevate your existing human force into a higher value chain by replacing their mundane chores with half humans. You cannot just do, hey, I'm doing back office automation with some RPA, but I still have front office manual tasks. Or I'm doing some front office cute chatbots, but I still have back office and an intermediate ticketing system in the middle. You really need your concept that you have pioneered of OneOffice, where you have a comprehensive system that goes from front to back, that can actually shorten the handle times, and ASA times obviously are seconds as compared to the wait times that you used to experience. and can actually handle the cases that we are experiencing in the industry. The TD Bank is one of the leading pioneering banks in digital revolution, but the cases that they are challenging us now, we start to see in North America. The largest one here is saying, no, I don't want to just see my savings balance and my checking balance. I want to be able to see, my customers need to get that differentiated experience where they say, do I have adequate money in my checking account to meet my month-end expenses, bills? And if I don't, then can you please transfer the requisite amount from my money market account to the checking to make my month-end bill payments? That's the bar today of differentiated banking experience. And obviously, all of this work has moved remote, and everyone is actually, to exactly your point here, the OneOffice is what everybody has subscribed to, that this is going to be the lines between what was human and what is carbon and what is silicon, and what is human and what is digital, are progressively getting diffused as we all move to remote work around the globe. That's what we are seeing. And so your concept of OneOffice has really started to become one of the seminal concepts that is shaping up the delivery, remote, of the combined hybrid force.
Right. Thanks, Chetan. So Robert at TD Bank, you're hands-on IT guy, and you've been obviously working a lot, rolling out these types of solutions. What's been your experience, A, doing this in a remote environment, and B, general, as you looking around you at the needs you have working for a Canadian bank, do you feel there's even more need now for solutions like Amelia? I mean, I'd love to hear a bit more about how this is changing for you.
Yeah, I mean, definitely if I kind of look at the whole banking experience, I mean, generally from a technology perspective, first of all, we all had some kind of level of remote capability to work from home and that sort of thing in the past. It's definitely become an interesting way to work like that, every single day. And folks are managing and leveraging, different types of collaboration tools and that sort of thing that we have out there to be able to work on, to continue to work together. One of the things I'd say from a banking perspective, and one of the bigger impacts we've had obviously has been, the drive into the call centers. So, with reduced branch hours and reduced branch staff, that has put a lot of pressure on the call centers. TD Bank, over the last 20 years has kind of grown hugely through, a variety of acquisitions and internal growth. And our call centers, even kind of prior to COVID, was something that we've been looking at as, how do we kind of upgrade those, and how do we leverage conversational AI within those spaces? So, one of the great things about conversational AI in terms of how it, from a customer experience perspective, first off, I'd say, having a platform in there actually does give you great customer insights. One of the things that, I saw kind of looking at call centers, and when people are tracking, calls that are coming into, they may not always capture what exactly the true intent of why that individual was coming in. There's some great analytics that come out through the conversational AI platforms that, will help you really understand what the customers are asking and where you want to kind of target to kind of have those better conversations. The other thing is, there's other capabilities out there that we're looking at and, saying with potential of, is there agent assist type tools, and almost kind of that, again, someone kind of listening to a conversation and be able to serve up content that can, help assist that agent and guide them in that direction. Today, I think some of our call center agents, and, particularly say even on insurance side, they may be using, 25 different tools to collect a claim that's coming in from someone who's had an accident. How could we actually build that experience through a conversational AI process that, A, could be first, piloted internally, and then, once we've got it in a good state, it's something we could actually then expose to customers as well. So these are all sort of things that have, the whole COVID pandemic has been kind of even almost helping write the business case. So I definitely see it, something that, we're going to put a lot more focus and probably accelerate some of those changes we want there. You know, the other thing, you know, spending a day in a contact center and you know, you talk about sort of, you know, the intellectual property within some of our, you know, folks that are subject matter area experts in specific areas, and just watching how quickly they're able to respond to that, you know, and being able to actually train that intelligence into a, you know, a chatbot, is something that we're, you know, want to try to be able to harness, you know, and again, being able to get the best answers out there, to folks and as quickly as possible, something that we think that this platform can provide. The other thing that TD has been really big on is the Omni experience. And, you know, can we, you know, I mentioned kind of the importance on, you know, that TD has put on branches, but we've been on a 10-year journey now around digital, and with the goal of really, you know, giving our customers access to whatever channel is most comfortable to them. But then also, you know, as they move between different channels, keeping continuity, on, you know, so that we understand our customers, we know the types of conversations they've had in the past, you know, and that way we can serve them better. And, you know, what you don't want is an experience of, you know, someone having to kind of re-explain everything every time they're trying to engage with you. But you know, knowing where to pick up the conversation from the last time and assisting them as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Robert. That's an excellent explanation. And I've had a great question come in, and I'm going to have a go answering myself, and I think other people should as well, which is a guy I know who's a chief technology officer. I won't name his name, but he's asked why he's really struggled with the terminology "going digital." You know, he's been like this for the last 10 years. What do we really mean by it? So many different answers, and I will actually sympathise with the gentleman and say, yes, you're absolutely right. We've spent a long time defining digital, and the original definition was around the fact that it's about driving customer revenue, leveraging digital technology like mobile, social, analytics. Now I think it's changed. I think this crisis has changed what digital is, because it actually means something now. And I think it's creating the ability for customers and employees to literally operate anywhere they want in the world in a borderless, secure type of environment where everything is available in the cloud. They can operate in this digital capability where you don't think where these services are being delivered. You're being engaged in the way that you want to engage using purely electronic means, and it's getting away from tethers and ties and delivery centers and things like that. And I think we had the CEO of TCS came out during their announcement, a $20 billion plus leader in IT services as well. And he came out and said, the delivery center model is going away. You know, we got to get ready for this borderless environment and all this type of thing. So Eric Hutter, I know you'll have a great view here. Do you feel digital is taking on a whole different meaning based on the way that we're starting to operate with each other in this environment?
Yeah, I like the comment there that was made. I do think there's a confusion of digital. You know, some people think that digital is really just an optimization to the point that was made. You know, we've just simply gotten better. We're using technology to get more optimized, to get more efficient, more productive. Well, I think in the spirit of what companies, or at least the C-level, is expecting from a quote digital transformation, it's when you create new streams of revenue. It's when you actually begin to build new businesses. That's the real return on that investment. So I do agree. I think we have to get definitional. We have to appreciate that, you know, this conversation is like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. To some companies, you know, in some parts of the world, that's a great catch-up moment to be digitally optimized. To some, they've already done all that, right? And now they're really looking for, how do I build and grow my business? Which is why when you think about this OneOffice experience, it's great. We spend a lot of time in the back, but we've got to get to the front. We got to get to the building of the business. You know, the pandemic this year, so many companies called off their guidance, right? We did as well, because it's just so unpredictable. But when we come into 21, they will begin to really judge how well, right, we're valued based on how we rebound. And I think that's where you got to get to the front. So I do think it's important when we engage in internal, external, your provider of services, or you're just having, like Rob, inside your bank, having conversations, you got to define it. You got to understand what it's really going to mean and do for you. Otherwise, it's just more initiatives, more money spent, and and hopefully incremental. But we're in a step change. I mean, this is a leap forward. Can you imagine if you're an executive walking in over an initiative and telling your board or your C level that, hey, we still got that 2-year digital transformation project on the books? No. It's now 2 months. The expectations have all reset. I don't think our journey of whatever we think digital means to each one of us is changing, but the timeline certainly changed overnight. And we have to embrace it, and we have to look at it holistically, but it has to create competitive advantage and new revenue streams.
Yeah, that's a great response, Eric. And I'm gonna pick on Rob again, because I was talking with one of the big 4 consultancies just a couple of weeks ago, and they were working on some of the COVID app tracking for the US government, and they said they were trying to fast track an 8 months worth of work in 2 weeks in a model like this. And they were figuring out how to just cut corners everywhere they could. And they were finding an amazing ability to get things done a lot faster when there's a real race on to get things done. When you look at things, you work for a large, financial services firm, Rob, and do you feel that things are getting done quicker now with more urgency than they could ever have done before? And what sort of things can you share with us you're doing to maybe accelerate change within your organization?
Sure. Yeah. Definitely, it's something that we talk about on a lot of calls around. Obviously, we've had to do strategic things to kind of address the situation when it comes to COVID. There's been a lot of amazing things that I think in the past would have been multi-month projects that have literally turned around in a few weeks. There, so it's amazing how fast we can go. But again, with all the proper kind of governance and controls in place there, people have really stepped up to the challenge to help us get some things done really quickly. One sort of specific thing we've done from a chatbot experience perspective that we're actually launching actually US wide this morning to our employees has been a passport or boarding pass app. As you know, in the United States, with the different states opening up and people returning back to work, there's regulatory things that need to be done, and they vary from state to state in terms of COVID attestation for people returning to work. So within a matter of a couple of days, we were able to actually integrate a chatbot into a mobile app. This has actually been pushed out to our employees, and they are leveraging it as a way to attest. So they, depending on the state that they're in, and actually even within some of the counties within those states, they're presented with a bunch of questions that they respond to, and then that gives them a boarding pass to be able to enter into their place of work for the day. So again, something that's been driven by regulatory, something also that can change, literally from day to day in terms of what the types of questions maybe we want to ask, the counties that are involved. But something we were able to kind of really pull together in a couple of days, and then spend about a week and a half on fine-tuning the user experience there. But then at the same time, as these different states come out with different regulations, we're literally able to make changes, in an hour. And the nice thing is we don't have to push a mobile app change out. We literally just, update the chatbot instance in production, and away we go.
Wow. So most interesting how that's happening. So thinking about how we as human beings can be more effective in the world we're in and the world we're going into, there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily talent that we learn in college. It's just stuff we're born naturally with, being passionate, being coachable, doing extra. I think being a great communicator is very important. But I'd love to just hear from everybody here on, what are the attributes, the talent attributes that you think are going to be most effective for people to be successful in a challenging environment like this? Maybe Eric, do you want to kick this one off?
Sure. Look, I think you have to be adaptable. I mean, just first and foremost, you have to be open to the change and appreciate the future. But I think that starts with, as much as we've been talking about a lot of concepts and technologies and processes, don't forget organizational change management. I mean, one of the biggest things you've got to prepare the people for is what the future actually does look like, how this is complementary, how this enhances their success, how does this, if you will, secure their future. And I think that to me is important. So if you do that well, I think the level of adaptability that people will take on or accept, or the change that they will accept, and the speed at which they can accept it will be much accelerated. So I think you just have to be adaptable and open. You know, I look at also scalability, right? One of the things that we're doing right now is I'm actually assessing every one of my direct reports, and I'm assessing the next level. And it's not because we're trying to weed them out. What we're trying to figure out is where's your strengths? What are you scalable to? So as we restructure, and we do have to restructure as a provider to meet the new world, we've got to be able to put you back into roles where your strengths are maximized. And so again, I think, again, being open-minded, being adaptable, and being appreciative of where this could go and looking for the opportunities in it. But it's incumbent upon us to put a good OCM program in place to eliminate the fear, the doubt, the uncertainty, which always is what stops the change from happening, right? Because people just don't step into the dark, right? Unless they know it's safe.
Right. I see that's a great answer. And, you know, as you look at the way your clients' needs are changing, do you feel there is this pollination between people really needing to understand business logic and tech together now much more than they used to, and stop looking at things in vacuums? Because I mean, we're seeing this in spades and helping clients figure out how to coach, mentor their staff in different ways that they've even tried before.
Yeah, I absolutely think it arrived a while back. It arrived back when this new business model came on board that is 8 times anybody else's market caps, right? It's the Alibabas, it's the network orchestrator, where people just simply arrived on the scene, aggregated what existed in the marketplace to a superior experience. And that just beat out all other market caps of any other business model that had existed prior. And now you got to take the same concept of what those companies have done, right? With so few people, really not owning much asset, just creating an experience through sequencing of available assets in the marketplace. That's where we're at right now. That's why when I look at my digital sales platform, I look at what Amelia is doing for us with clients, and I look at this digital associate, this OneOffice concept, we've got to bring the ecosystem together. It absolutely has to be thought holistically and how it all is going to create the ultimate experience. I also have to be really aware of what my competitors are doing and what experience are they going after, right? So I do think we've arrived at that moment of, if you don't think of it together, you're simply going to fall behind.
Thank you, Eric. So in the interest of time, and this could have gone on for another half an hour if we wanted, I think, I'd like everybody just to sum up maybe one thing that they take away from today's conversation that could really change the future of how we work. Maybe, Chetan, you'd like to kick off one thing that you think is going to really change how we work together based on what we've talked about today.
Thank you, Phil. I think Eric and Robert are doing it. We are just the egg-headed engineers in the back that are delivering solutions that can actually achieve the results that their customers want to experience with their experience and the customer experience. I would say that one thing that can change is the competitive differentiation that you touched upon right at the onset, and Eric articulated very well. Everyone is expecting the new digital era that the world is waking up into is going to be 35% more cost efficient and is going to have an improved level of customer experience, including a continuous level of customer reachability and the streamlining of the supply chain that would have been achieved by digital pioneers like Eric and Robert. That's what is the big thing that we are seeing in the marketplace.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Rob, TD Bank, any big thoughts that you're going to take away that you think is going to change how we operate?
I think coming out of, listening to all the conversation here today, I think digital and that drive to digital for those that have, either been on that journey for a while or, now it's becoming a bigger realization. It's going to become definitely more important. I think customers, in terms of how they want to be engaged and assistance is going to be more critical. So, the things definitely, I think things that we're seeing as becoming more important, is that, again, omni experience and being able to personalize our conversations with customers is going to become more important.
Thank you. And Eric, what do you think? One thing that's going to change the environment from today's discussion?
I think back to what's driving a lot of this dialogue is when we think about this as essential engagement, next move from the pandemic, right? Where companies and even associates and people will begin to define what they believe to be necessary to have to engage with people or not. How they decide that the business can be conducted safer, right? As the pandemic kind of runs itself. And by the way, this won't be the last one, right? I mean, this is setting us up for is a pervasive way of doing business across the globe in a way that we thought about it, but we had planned for it to be years away. So I do think we have to start from that moment and work our way backwards as to where, as each individual companies, are we going to be prepared to engage in the manner that's been now predefined? And that's going to be at a company by company basis. Even within companies, I think departments may decide, right, what that engagement model now looks like. If we're not digitally ready, if we don't have our digital associates trained, if they're not ready to engage, if they're not knowledgeable, then we just simply fall behind the person who has one. And that's the way I look at it. Just starting from that moment of that conversation, just thinking about the possible scenarios of engagement. How am I prepared to handle all of those decisions and succeed?
Wonderful. And Melissa, you're an analyst covering this space a lot. You hear a lot and see a lot. Any big takeaway that you think is going to change the work environment that you've learned today?
Yeah, awesome comments from the panelists. Thanks, guys. It gave me a lot of food for thought. I think fundamentally, we always talked about omni-channel in the CX space, and it's just, frankly, it's been such a misnomer. And I think, based on what I'm hearing from you guys and the developments that are being made, OneOffice is kind of becoming the new omni-channel, right? It's not about, just being able to connect to customers using various, like the old multi-channel purview, but it's actually about connecting the employee experience with the customer experience in this kind of borderless world that you were talking about, Phil, and actually redesigning what that looks like. And the comment about what actually is digital. Well, it's now about a new way of working, about creating new revenue streams, and I think that's what we're moving towards.
Awesome. Well, what a great conversation we've had today. A lot of remarkable change going on in the environment we're in, and it's at least comforting and exciting to hear about enterprises such as yours, Robert, who are continuing to invest and strategize and think very cleverly in this environment about how they're going to come back on top when they emerge. And Chetan Dubey, thank you very much. IPsoft, Eric at Infosys, good to talk to you again. Sorry, Unisys, I must apologize. Good to talk to you again after a few years. Robert Scalgin from TD Bank, and myself, Phil First. Thank you very much, everybody. Really enjoyed the time today. We'll have a copy of the presentation available on our website, hfsresearch.com, and you can listen to this again if you like, and we'll attempt to get some of your questions in time. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric and Rob. Bye.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.